Welcome to our show on women, wealth, and social change, where we are unpacking trends and what is not working in philanthropy and impact investing, and also the exceptional opportunities we have before us to do things differently, to do things in a better way. And we have a very exciting guest with us today, Vicki Saunders. Vicki, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Very happy to be here.
Wonderful. So Vicki, you are the founder of an incredible movement called SHEEO. You are also an award-winning mentor. You are a serial entrepreneur. I can't believe that I've only met you a few weeks ago, and yet I've heard about your tremendous work over the years and was just really inspired by our discussion a few weeks ago on this very topic, and wanted just to invite you to share a little bit more on this wonderful journey that you've been on.
It's very challenging to kind of unravel what we're in and like what's not working. Mm-hmm. And so it's been a real journey. So I have always kind of thought at a systems level. I want to have a big impact. I want to really address root causes of things. I don't even think I knew what a system was when I got started, right? It was just like, everything seems so broken. What's wrong here? And so you start with a thing and then you start something else. And so for me, it was in general, as I looked at the world, I'm like, why can't you do good and make money at the same time? Which is kind of a normal question to ask now. It was not normal 20-30 years ago. People were like, just, stop trying to change everything. Just go make your money and give it away later. Like that was the original thinking, right? And a lot of people still think that, like make as much as you can and then give it away. But I, from a very, very young age had that kind of like seed inside of me that I wanted to figure out. And so I did a lot of experimenting before we sort of called it social entrepreneurship, trying to figure out what are the business models that don't do harm? Mm-hmm. What are the business models that heal? And so I've been on this journey for a very, very long time. And on part of the thing that I found only about 6 or 7 years ago when I was deep diving around the numbers for women being funded, women entrepreneurs being funded, like we all have these stories of like only women in the room, blah, blah, heard it all over and over. But when I heard that it was somewhere between 2 and 4% of venture capital, of capital that's out there, bank loans too, not just venture, right, goes to 51% population, my head exploded. Because I had felt that, but I didn't really realize how bad those numbers were. And then it's, unraveling all of that. People are like, why? And first, even 6 years ago, people were like, do women apply? Is that the problem? Like all of the crazy things of why this happens. And so when people, 5 years later, when we've explored this, looked at this, seen article after article, data after data around the biases that exist in our systems, people are going, oh, okay, this is just built in. Mm-hmm. This is part of the systems that we're in, and we actually have to address that at the root causes. But this is not an easy thing to do, because you have to actually if you were starting over again, reset. And a lot of us are very of that, like, this is the way it's done. This is the way we do it. Like we're very stuck in a mindset of how things are, and everything is made up. Literally everything, my friends, is made up. This was made up by humans. It needs to be changed by humans. And it's been, we're on this track of make as much as you can, accumulate as much as you can, winner takes all for a long, long time. And we need to shift it. And so at SHEEO, that's a long preamble. At SHEEO, we stepped back and went, okay, for me anyway, if you were going to do this over again, how would you start? And at first I thought like it was an add women and stir. We'll just create a women's version of that. Doesn't quite work. You have the same mindset, same challenges. And we're all very conditioned to think of a leader in a certain way. That, leader pitches, you stand on stage and you beat your chest. Women always lose at that game, just always. Yeah. Because we don't look like the hoodie dude who just dropped out of Harvard, right? Like that's not a thing. And then it's like, what does she think? Who does she think she is? Yep. And there's just a lot of challenges around that piece. So I thought, how are women that I know doing social entrepreneurship, or more broadly, really just like rethinking what business is. How are they doing things to businesses do they have? What do they really need? And it's not just money. We need expertise. We need advice that's on our own terms, not someone telling us how to do it like everyone's done it before.
Right.
And access to customers at an early stage, very early stage, and just access to networks and influencers. And so, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I actually, I don't want to interrupt Vicki, because what you're sharing is, it's so great, and it's so rich in many things that opened my eyes even when we chatted a few weeks ago. That's come up on different interviews that we've had. So one being that, of course, when you're striving to challenge the status quo is going to remind you regularly that it does not want to be challenged. And so that's hard. And I think, going all the way back to saying, to looking at the very systems that are designed to work in this way and saying, well, the system's actually not broken. It's working just the way it was intended to work. We need a new system, and it really goes all the way to some of these other issues that you're pointing out, which is how we give credit for ideas. It's like this notion that one person is going to figure it all out and save the world. Whereas, really, it's a community of people. It's a diverse community of people. So how do we really bake in this notion of radical collaboration, funding business models that are not destroying the planet? This is something that you brought up the last time we shared. And these are not easy questions to answer, but at the same time, how do we not get bogged down in overthinking and not doing anything? And I feel like, over the past 10 years I've spent at water.org and water equity, I've been very much in that bucket where I'm like, listen, there's a great idea. We've pioneered it. We've been scaling it, not at the scale that we could attain, but if there was just more flexibility built into both the philanthropic funding models and how we approach impact investing, we could do so much more. But as I've been learning on these discussions, it's not just about putting more capital towards those ideas. It's really looking back at some of those business models and just making sure that we are not doing more harm than good. And so it brings me to another question that I had for you, which is, when we spoke and I was sharing with you the idea of doing the show that was really just, or this conversation that's unpacking these different trends, you talked about trust-based investing and how, through the movement with SHEEO, you had really started to bring these investors to the table who are ready to invest in promising, female venture leaders. They are ceding power. They're not coming to the table with this expectation that first and foremost, we're going to generate market rate returns and it's going to, these are business models that will be extremely profitable. It's more with this mindset of, I'm ready to learn and we have an opportunity for transformation. I would love for you to share a little bit more on what you're learning there through this experience.
Yeah, well, so we have all these accelerators, incubators set up with playbooks that are like, oh, if you're this, you just do X, Y, and Z and you'll grow. But all that does is all based on the past. And all it guarantees is that we know we'll get more of the past, which we do not need. Thank you very much. We have to rethink it. So how do you do that, right? And so we designed this really unique approach where imagine that these ventures have got it covered. They're on their own journey. This is what really good investors do, trust-based investing. They get in relationship with someone and they're like, over to you, Alex.
Yeah.
Figure it out. I trust you're going to figure it out. You're going to hit a million different problems and potholes and blah, blah on the way.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like you're a good learner.
Right.
And you're going to learn fast enough to figure this out. Like angel investors get that. And they're just like, yep, this person's got it. Nobody's plan and deck looks like it's the only thing as an entrepreneur is that's not what's going to happen. Right. Whatever you got written down. And so you're really always investing in someone that you sort of trust they're going to figure it out. And then you partner. And so I was looking for how do we create an experience for investors to show up where they sort of cede they bring their power with instead of the power over. And so our capital is gifted in So we have collective community capital that's gifted in. The ventures are temporary custodians of this money because it's a loan, and they are paying it back over 5 years. And then we're bringing everything we've got. So love your idea, Alex. It is amazing. How can I help? Very different than the spirit of the way it's done now, which is like, hey, I'm giving you this money and I want a 10x, baby, or a 50 or a whatever. So this comes with a totally different thing. And it's amazing. Like, we're not really in relationship together. The people with the money and the customers are not really in relationship with the entrepreneurs. And when you create that kind of an environment and you're like, what do you need? How can I help? How can I support you? It feels incredible to give what you have in overflow. For me, it's connections. Someone, I get pinged all day long every day. Do you know so-and-so? Can you connect me to so-and-so? I'm like, ding, ding, ding. Yes. Effortless, easy, and invaluable. Like, just huge. When it comes with, that person owes me a favor. And so now I'm going to like cash it in for you. And so we all get to share what we've got in overflow. Some people are like, unbelievable with spreadsheets and like figuring out new models for cash flow, et cetera. And we all get to share that in a way that is really fulfilling, and we're creating difference. And then we feel like we're part of your success. So this is a really powerful ecosystem that's on demand. Show up how you want to, when you need to. And we continue to sort of see lots of surprises along the way. Like, you have, I have activators, the women who gift in this capital, saying, do you think that venture, don't they need a marketing plan? And I'm like, well,
yes,
maybe not, who knows? Right. I'm like, well, do you think they'd be open to an intro? And I'm like, you can try. And I'm thinking, absolutely not. There's no way they want a marketing plan from some like person who just graduated from an MBA who has no experience. That's not happening. But it's like, and then it's all on your own terms, right? So reach out if you'd like to continue to support somebody. But if they don't respond, that's okay. It's working perfectly.
Yeah.
Because we, but like add your gifts and your opportunities to people, and, we see what happens. And because I just really think this crazy time we're in, whenever something comes to me and it makes so much sense and it seems so rational, I'm like, yeah, probably not going to work, because it makes sense. Right? Like, if we look at our world, we're in this really weird time where the old is sort of dying. The new looks quite different than what we're used to. And it's time for us to be like, go on the learning journey instead of the know-it-all journey. I did this, just follow me, you'll get more, because we don't want more of the same. So it is trust-based, but it's in deep relationship. Like, we get to know each other, we listen to each other, we find each other in the community, and you get the people that have the values alignment with you to go achieve what it is that you're here to achieve.
I love that, Vicki. And, we had a conversation earlier today with Ellen McGirt. I don't know if you know Ellen, she's a remarkable journalist and is also senior editor at Fortune magazine. And she's been very involved in these conversations around philanthropy. And she shared a very similar philosophy where we need to be in this time where we need to collectively learn together. And it made me think of something you shared with me when we spoke, which is, we have to understand that we don't know everything. We don't have all the answers. And, everything that you're describing right now in terms of this culture, this mindset, it would be revolutionary if it was in the mainstream across, I'll say philanthropy and impact investing, but it's really broadly in terms of how we think about using our vast capital resources to create a new society, a new world. And, I was sharing this earlier on this year when, Larry Fink of BlackRock was sharing with the world that, look, we have to see that the businesses we invest in are going to have a plan to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, which is great. It's a great step forward. But imagine if the mandate was, and we need to see really how these efforts are going to tangibly make a difference for the hundreds of millions of people who still live in poverty, for the 2 billion people who don't have water. If your business plan is not actively and concretely demonstrating how we are going to correct these imbalances, we will no longer invest in your business. Now, I know I'm dreaming, but it is a little bit one of the layers in terms of rethinking how we value what we spend our money on. And if that was happening simultaneously, where there's this culture that you're speaking about that is just really alive within the philanthropic and impact investing community, all of a sudden we have the intention and the goal of working together to learn and to really be guided by the minds, the people who are closest to the issues, who have these ideas on how to tackle them. You know, it just goes back to years of conversations with funders around restricted funding. First of all, this term unrestricted and restricted is such a horrible term. It sounds like it was from like another lifetime. But why can't we think about it exactly in the context that you talked about, Vicki? You meet a nonprofit leader, you acknowledge that they are not going to perfectly, follow this outline plan, but they're going to take you on a genuine, transformative, transparent journey where you will see how your resources are, yielding impact. It's impact per dollar invested, it's transformation, it's all of these things. And so I go back to a term that you used that I loved, which was a constellation of trends. When you're hearing all of these different ideas that I'm sharing here, what comes to mind for you, Vicki? Like if you could share the lessons learned from your experience, what should we be learning?
Yeah, so I would start with what we need to unlearn.
Right.
So we're really conditioned to think of money in a certain way, to think of how you get things done, to think of scale. Everything has to scale or don't even bother. Like we're just in such a crazy, unbalanced time. So we have to unlearn the ways of the past. We have to, so that's the number one thing before you can even bring in the future. And then I think we have to practice collaborating together. I think it's the only thing we haven't figured out as humans is how to be together and how to work together towards common goals. Because we have all that we need in diverse groups of people coming together. We have all that we need out there. We have more than enough for everyone. We just have to reorganize and then figure out how to co-create this new world together. And I think the big thing that we learn in innovation is that the best ideas are coming from the margins all the time. They're out on the edge. They're like not in the center of the power center. That's part of the problem. People are in these bubbles, just like recycling the same stuff. So those who have been put to the margins have very unique lived experiences that are really actually the majority, not the minority. Right. The people that are in power right now are the very minority in a tight little tiny bubble that does not reflect what we're all here for. And so practicing working together, bringing new voices in is the work of the day from my experience. Doing shared work, like what is the thing that we're working on together? And so every week at SHEEO, we are practicing using all the resources that we have towards for the highest and best use on major challenges that we're facing on the planet together. Right. And just trusting that people doing things on their own terms with the support that they need, using our power with others instead of over, is way more powerful. And, our results speak for themselves. Our ventures are doing incredibly well during COVID. It was just amazing. People pivoted, nobody failed. We were all hands on deck, triaging our community, red, yellow, and green every week. Who needs it the most? How do we help you? What are your asks? And we practice contributing to each other, which requires you to actually receive. This is one of the big unlearnings, is you have everything you need around you, but you have to ask. We're conditioned not to ask. Right. And so you not asking means I don't get to give what I have in abundance. Right. And so there's a million things to unlearn and to relearn. But again, I think this working on shared projects together and recognizing that together we can change anything that we want to, and we have all that we need. That's the underlying piece that we just keep learning over and over.
I love that. And, I was doing, I'm not just saying this, I was doing some self-reflection after we chatted, and there was a couple of other conversations we had already on radical collaboration. And I was thinking, how do I reflect that, and how Lebec Consulting is outlining its goals with certain clients and partners. How are we really creating this new dynamic of radical collaboration with existing internal resources within that organization, with others who need to participate in this? You know, there's probably ways in which we define our goals and what we bring to the table that can already harness a different culture, a different language. And so I think what you're sharing is, it's incredible. And you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so many ideas that happen at the margin. And while I fully recognize, you know, I'm a white woman, I'm privileged, you know, I have not experienced poverty. I will say that any of the best ideas or the moments where I felt like my creativity was in a different place was when everything was at stake. I was not in this zone of comfort. You know, I was really pushing myself to take a risk and do things differently. And it's so hard for us to embrace that. We don't want to be defined by failures, yet failure is so important. And it's all about unlearning how we think about failure and all of those things. So thank you for that, Vicki. I have 2 more questions for you, and we have 5 minutes. So you're going to tell me if we can tackle both or one of them. But the first is, you know, you spoke to me also about this rise of 0% loans for female businesses, which I think is amazing. You know, we experienced a little bit of that at Water Equity. We were able to mobilize some 0% loans. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how that unfolded with your community. And the second question is, if I gave you unlimited resources, what would you do?
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah, well, I'm going to start with the second one because we have that. We have unlimited resources. They're everywhere.
You just said, yeah.
Right. So it's really about, what do we value? What are we going to value? What matters to us? What kind of world do we want to create? At this moment in time, because we have 0% interest loans, I'm going to mash them together, because during COVID, we witnessed like 0% interest loans all over the place. In Denmark, they have a 0% interest mortgage. There's negative interest rates in Europe. So money's free from like that finance. I know it sounds really whacked, but literally like money is out there free. And so what is, you know, the Marshall Project of this moment in time? What is, if anything was possible, because we're just printing money, it seems like every single day, what kind of world do you want to live in? That's the hard part, right? We need to collectively decide, is there enough for everyone?
Right.
Can we create the kind of world we want to? And we're so stuck in this like self-interest, winner takes all, accumulate and hold on. Indigenous cultures, if you look back to how Indigenous cultures worked around the collective economy, they had this thing called the potlatch. And the potlatch was an event that would occur when someone had accumulated too much. There's like too much accumulation in the community. They'd have a big party and give it all away, because it didn't belong to the trader who had exceptional skills as a trader. It belonged to the community. You are a temporary custodian of all of the resources around you, and you're here to be a good steward and take care of it. And so everything flowed to the highest and best use defined by the community. So getting into local communities, looking at the resources we have, looking at the needs, and getting those resources to flow to those that are most in need is the whole point for all of us to thrive. And so that's a very different way of thinking about capital and resources. And it is proven to like keep societies going a lot longer than we've been going. So I think we're at this moment in time where we have a whole opportunity to like really rethink what it means to be a human on the planet and how to be a great custodian and share the resources that we have.
It is wonderful, Vicki. I thank you so much for making time for us today and sharing those incredible insights. I can't wait for us to circle back on a part 2 of this conversation. Thank you for being with us. Radical collaboration, rethinking our role as humans here on this planet and how we utilize these resources. I hope everybody who watches today's episode will go check out SHEEO and the movement that you've led. Thank you, Vicki, for being here.
Thanks for having me.